Hello everyone and welcome to Galaxy 89 Cars. Now at the moment you find me in an Alpine A110 because I've been invited down to Renault's West London dealership. Now of course Alpine is a separate company, but it is also a part of the sort of mother company of Renault. I've just finished shooting my in-depth video which I did with a separate car actually in the dealership itself. Can't wait to bring you that. This car actually has some really interesting features. But now, of course, I'm doing a very short kind of driven review, and it will be short as well, because I mean, I've only got the car for around half an hour. So I'm just going to try and pick out some key information of what it's like to drive the car and some main kind of specifications as well. So this car is a 2018 Alpine A110 Premier Edition. And that means you get basically the highest spec of the current generation of cars. So, of course, you get the 1.8 litre single turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It's mid-rear mounted, so it's kind of a challenger to a Cayman or a Boxster. The engine is literally right behind the seats here. This engine produces 248 brake horsepower and over 300 newton meters of torque, and that's good for a 0 to 62 mile per hour time of 4.5 seconds. Autocar and Top Gear have both said that they got it in 4.7, but does 0.2 really make that much difference? I don't think so. The car also has a switchable sports exhaust, which is opened up by enabling one of the different drive modes. So we've got 3 main modes. So obviously we've got drive, neutral and reverse. But then on top of that as well, we've got sport and track. I'm not going to test track here. I will show you a display on the overlay, but we will test sport in a little bit. So what are some of my first impressions of the car? Well, it's got an all aluminium body, which means it's super light, coming in at around only 11 to 1200 kilograms. Now it's 200 kilograms lighter than a Cayman or a Boxster, which is obviously a benefit immediately. But sometimes you can have a bit of weight in a car and it can kind of push it down and sort of enable a more confidence-inspiring driving feel. But I have to say with this, it doesn't necessarily feel like that's really needed. I mean, the lightness inside the steering, it's mechanico-electrical power steering. And believe it or not, that doesn't actually create a detached driving feel at all. You do feel very connected to it. And because it's so light, and it's very rigid as well, it produces a very nimble driving experience and very direct, predictable driving experience as well. Now, the engine sound, I probably have to say it's characterful. Now, driving the amount of cars that I've driven, I've kind of experienced quite a few different engine sounds, and turbocharged 4-cylinder engines can be a bit lacking in certain respects, but this definitely isn't lacking in any way. Even in low revs at the moment, there's a very slight burble coming out of the engine, and you get a kind of very immediate whooshing sound from the turbo and the dump valve. And if you power on, I'll give you an example. So you get a really nice exhaust burble, but then you also get the kind of whoosh from the actuation valve as well, from the turbo. So it's a very characterful engine, and they've engineered a very good exhaust system. I'll do a little comparison between the valve closed and open. There's a button on the steering wheel just here. If we press that, we go into sport. Sport brings the revs up just a little bit, and it also opens the valve on the exhaust. It also tightens the suspension, of which this car, well, it's fitted to double wishbones at the front and the rear. And let's see how it sounds now. So I mean, we even get a crackle and a burble from the exhaust system, and from a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, you know, that's a really key feature. So as I said before, this car comes with a 7-speed DCT from Megane RS. Now, it's not straight from there, it's not plucked from Megane and put straight into the Alpine. Alpine have done quite a little bit of fettling with it to make it more appropriate for this car. In in automatic mode, you really don't notice the gear changes whatsoever. It's not jerky, it's very smooth. The engine gets a little bit stifled. That might be because it's quite a low displacement engine, but the benefit of that is you get a really nice noise coming out of the exhaust system. So being the Premier model, you get the focal speakers, carbon fiber spec, different things, but it's limited to 1955 models. And that's a kind of commemoration of the fact that the original Alpine company started in 1955. Now, unsurprisingly, all of these have been sold out, and they were pretty much sold out last year. The car comes in at around £52,000, and you can spec it up in different ways. Alpine have really stripped the A110 out to kind of bring out the most from the engine as possible, so sort of get the max level of performance. Because this is a real driver's car. I mean, it doesn't have a glove compartment on the passenger side, and it's got a very, very small frunk at the front of the car. We're sitting on manually adjustable bucket seats. I mean, these have no tilt function, so they're only manually adjustable in terms of moving the seats back and forward. However, the interior is finished to a very, very high standard. I mean, you have aluminium components and accenting, all around the interior. You have blue contrast stitching, sort of double-lined. There's real carbon fiber components. I asked one of the reps at Alpine if I saw carbon fiber, would it be the real thing? He assured me that all of the carbon fiber that I can see on the inside and outside is genuine carbon fiber. Leather upholstered, or leather and Alcantara upholstered steering wheel with a leather 12 o'clock marker. Contrast once again with the blue from the outside. So it's and the seats as well. I mean, the one thing I've always really liked from the Alpine, from seeing it in different videos and seeing it at Goodwood and things, the seats look really great, and they're actually very, very comfortable. Moving to aerodynamics quickly, at the front there are some sort of inbuilt canards, or some inbuilt vents at the front that help to funnel air around the side of the car and also into the brakes. There's different ridges and different accented lines that help to not only create a very sort of stylish aesthetic, also help to direct airflow around the car. As we move to the rear, there's a very, very subtle ducktail spoiler integrated into the car. There's no active aerodynamics. But if we move down, we have probably one of the biggest parts of aero on this car, which is the active Venturi Tunnels. Now, once again, I asked the rep if these were functional, and he assured me that the Venturis at the bottom were functional. So, of course, they bring in air from the front, and the shaping of them speeds up air and directs airflow to make it smoother coming out of the diffuser at the rear. So, as with most modern cars, the infotainment and information are broken up into two distinct places. So you have the first screen in front of me here, which is just one whole digital display, no mechanical or analog display components whatsoever. Now, it's broken down in this mode into two different parts. So it's got the revs and actually the direction of travel on the left. We've got the exterior outside ambient temperature, the time, and a fuel gauge. Below that we've got the gears selected and the different gear modes available, and these are broken up, or they're underlined with a very nice sort of French flag motif. And on the right side we've got a speedo, which is in miles per hour. Just to the left, in the beginning of the central column, we've got the infotainment screen. I don't know the exact dimensions of this, but you've got it's broken up into 5 main components. So you've got the main home screen. The home screen is broken up into the radio and entertainment, and then on the right of that it's phone connectivity, then sat-nav, and then a thing called My Spin, where you can put in a different Apple CarPlay, for example. And then the central option screen is kind of like dynamic driver info. So we've got different types of temperatures for the coolant and the intake. We have the amount of horsepower currently being used and torque, once again with temperatures as well. And then we've got actual active graphs that show us active bhp and Newton meter torque figures. And then we've even got things for the clutch temperature, current, gear, that kind of stuff. So it's very in-depth information. Below that we've got some aluminium controls for the start-stop. Yes, this car does have start-stop. It's meant to be light and economical to a certain extent, which is why it's got such a kind of low displacement powertrain. Then we've got traction control off, which we're not doing today. The hazard lights, car lock, And then the fifth button is just an empty button. The feel of the buttons is actually really, really nice. They're just milled aluminium components that follow on from the inlay just over here. So I've just finished my test drive with this Alpine A110 Premier, and I have to say I'm really rather impressed, especially with the engine and exhaust noise. I'll bring you the full in-depth tour as well, of course. Thank you again to West London Renault for the invite down. I had a really great time with the car. Please subscribe for the latest content. Until next time, thanks for watching.